This conference will now be recorded.
You hear me better, any better now?
A little bit, but it's pretty soft.
So do we need Jennifer to start the meeting?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Jennifer,
Okay,
would you
I'm
go
ready.
ahead? Thank you.
All right. So the July 2023 regular board meeting of the South Whitby Parks and Recreation District is called to order at 6:06. Is there anyone for public comment?
There is no one present, but I have public comment to be read. So I will just read it. This is from Barry Hayworth of the Whidbey Island Pickleball Club. He says, I apologize for not being here in person, but I wanted to make sure to express congratulations and gratitude for your successful application for RCO grants for the construction of permanent pickleball courts at the sports complex. These public courts will provide important recreational opportunities for the local community and a beneficial impact for many years to come. I know all the pickleball players and supporters on South Whidbey are excited to hear about this development and are looking forward to the process that will make the courts a reality. For those of us associated with the Whidbey Island Pickleball, we are particularly interested in the schedule needed for the local funding that we pledged for the project last year, and for the overall schedule and requirements for design and construction. The SWPRD commissioners and staff have done a great job of initiating and shepherding the grants process for this project, and for your support of our mini pickleball players with your programs over the past several years. Thank you. Again, that's Barry Hayworth for Whidbey Island Pickleball.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to the approval of the minutes, has every commissioner had an opportunity to review the regular meeting minutes for April 19th as well as June 21st?
Yes.
Are there any questions, comments, corrections? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on April 19th and the regular meeting on June 21st, 2023.
And I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the regular meeting minutes for April 19th, 2023, and regular meeting minutes for June 21st, 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Jake, aye.
Krista, aye.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Moving on to the treasurer's report.
There we go. I can see. Can you pull up the individual slides? Yeah, there we go.
Is that okay, Matt?
Yep, you can see it. Yeah, so similar situation to last month, and so far this year, net cumulative positive is favorable is 68K, mostly due to expense control. Our revenue is just about on plan, and you'll see that in the detail. But like I said, continuing to run ahead of schedule or ahead of favorable to budget overall, and most of it due to expense. Next, can you go to the revenue slide first? Yeah, and I apologize for not getting these reformatted so that it's clear, but this is the revenue schedule cumulative. Total is 4,000 favorable. And then the next slide in expense, you see the remaining 64K in favorability from expense control, and that's cumulative. And then you can see in the fund balances that we're on plan as of the end of the month. If there are no questions on those, we can look at the update to the vouchers. Gary, you want to touch on any updates?
Sure. Okay, so we updated payroll. We added an invoice for ARC Architects for the architectural and engineering services for the aquatic center. We added some lifeguard invoices for the triathlon. We added invoice for paying for our Summer Falcon basketball program. We added a invoice to South Woodby School District for facility rental for the community center for various programs.
Could this be made more clear?
Bigger.
Yeah, it seems just a little fuzzy.
I think it's because.
Is that just?
I think it's because it's on the wall.
Okay.
Here, let me.
Oh, that's better though, bigger.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then a couple of visa purchases, race numbers for the triathlon, and Adobe Creative Cloud. And we updated, mark these ones, updated deferred compensation and PERS retirement contributions. We added the payroll taxes for this batch. And there are a couple things that were removed for a couple of items. So we had an invoice for Humphrey Sign Company for signage out at Trustland Trails, but that is actually going to be paid directly by the South Woodby Parks and Aquatics Foundation out of a donation that we had received for signage out there. So they're going to pay that directly, and that's about it.
You show the
So Carrie, to be clear, that Humphrey sign for 70567 you said is going to be paid by the South Woodby Aquatic Foundation?
Yes, out of a donation that they received for that.
That's fantastic. Is there any way to recognize them for that?
Marnie from the foundation is on the call.
Yeah, so the donation was from an individual in the community, and the foundation is the one that received it. And yeah, Marnie is here. She wanted to say anything about it.
You know, I don't know any details about this. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So there was, I believe it was $4,000, or was it 2,000? Forgive me, I can't remember off the top of my head for this. And we were talking about the possibility of some map updates as well on a more professional level. So, but the person who donated the funds wished to be anonymous.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So were there any other questions on the vouchers?
If there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers in the amount of $126,381 and 62 cents for July from the M&O fund.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the vouchers in the amount of $126,381.62. All those in favor say aye.
Jake, aye.
Krista, aye.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the voucher list is approved. Moving on to the staff report, please.
Okay, so as far as programs report goes, it's triathlon week. There just wasn't time bandwidth for Sky to pull that together, but it's all coming together, and programs are full to capacity. Yeah, it's going well. Busy, busy, busy. There wasn't any official advance report, but Tom, do you have anything to add to?
It's very busy.
Okay. I think that's probably going to fit our entire report.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to keep up. This week doesn't help.
Okay. So one thing is we have a roofing project going on, and it's been interesting and loud, and it has inhibited some access to our building and getting deliveries and such. So it's coming along. The roof was definitely needed, so we'll get there.
When do they hope to be done? When do they hope to be done?
They had hoped to be done by the end of the week, but maybe it's extended by a day.
Yeah, got pushed off starting Monday because of the weather. So they'll probably be next week. Hopefully they're not in here working over the weekend.
Did they consult you at all about the timing?
It's the county.
Did the county consult?
There was, not exactly, there was like a last minute, we've scheduled it for this week.
Yeah, they just
We're having a meeting,
scheduled, so.
and we could have maybe, we wished now that it had not been this week. But we'll get through it. Tom and I met with Pat Cabay at the site for the new Maxwell Trails Park signage, and went over some details there. So Pat is getting started on actually carving the sign, and then in August we'll get started on clearing the spot and installing.
Cool.
And then does he put a finish coat on it too?
I assume so.
Yes, he started. He hasn't started carving yet.
I mean, when he's done carving. Does he do that on site? Or before he
I
installs
don't
it?
know.
Usually he brings it out painted, sealed, and then installs it, then touches up as needed, but I don't know what the colors are gonna be. I don't know anything about the size of the one.
I'm excited. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be nice looking. Sure. The Whidbey Island Triathlon is Saturday, July 22nd, and that's just a couple of days away, a few days away. And I know Sky could use more volunteers, so if you have time to give, or if you have someone that you can recruit for that. Note here about, meeting with Robert May of Whidbey Health EMS. So due to COVID and just transitions, our AED defibrillator program was out of compliance, just outdated basically. So we're working on updating that, and it involves some other defibrillators in the area, figuring out where everything has ended up, and updating our rules about it and coming up with a coordinator. So I think Robert is hoping that there will be one person that is a coordinator for all of the South Whidbey defibrillators, which involves checking on them monthly, making sure the batteries are up to date, making sure they're where they are supposed to be. And so I didn't volunteer us to do that at this time.
Yeah.
Someone from the Rotary may be willing to do it, so we're working that out. And the Rotary has donated many of the defibrillators to the community as an outreach. We hired a recreation assistant, Katie Sachs, and Sky's getting her oriented to the triathlon, pickleball, and more. I missed the top one, which is that an offer was made to Brian Thomaser, and it was accepted for the executive director position. A bit more about that later on. And we received our first reimbursement check for the aquatic center design. I can't remember how much it was, maybe 78,000, something like that. So there's 2 more to be reimbursed currently. And one couple of dates I wanted to highlight that are coming up. So on September 17th and October 19th, those were identified as dates for a public meeting for the pool design. So this is to get community feedback on the design. So after the first one, there will be some finessing of the design after getting feedback, and then they'll bring that back to the second one. So
Sorry, that is Sunday, the 17th. Do you have a time?
7th
7th.
and
So,
September 7th and October 19th. Sorry if I misspoke there.
Do we have a time on that?
Not yet.
Okay.
And we need to find a good location for it as well. All right, so that is it for the staff report, I believe.
Carrie, if the library is not available and you don't want to have it there, we could do it in the Windermere meeting room.
How big is that?
It will hold 40-ish.
Another thing that we had discussed would be telecom used to have that big room. But I don't know if it's actively being, it kind of got shut down, I think, for COVID, or it was being used for other purposes. So that was another spot that we were thinking that could house quite a few people.
Yeah, we could definitely ask George. I know that the Rotary used it within the last couple of months.
Oh, okay.
For an intern, like a Rotary intern thing, so.
And did it have like AV
Oh, yeah.
hookups? Of course they do.
Oh yeah, it's got everything.
Doing it at New Commons, the high school. What a 200 each.
Well, the Whitby Telecom can hold quite a few, what, like 100 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, their space is bigger than my meeting room.
Okay. Which of your locations is that in Freeland?
Yes, but the Whitby Tel space is more desirable and much larger.
Okay, if it's available. Okay. And South Whitby is cold. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it for the staff report.
Okay, are there any committee reports? All right, no committee reports. Moving on to unfinished business and the comprehensive plan programs. We'll start with the grants update.
Okay, I'm just going to read it. RCO grants for outdoor pickleball courts. At the June RCO funding board meeting, the outdoor pickleball court project was awarded $250,000 from youth athletic facilities. The project was first alternate for the matching WWRP local parks grant, but then we received notice that we had been approved, so that is funded. And here's the breakdown of, let me make this bigger. I can see that you guys can't see that. Okay, so how it's broken down, again, it's hard to see on the wall, isn't it, you guys?
this works.
Okay, so the way the project will be funded, it's WWRP local parks, 201,800. YAF is covering 250,000. So that brings a total grant of 451,800. The sponsor match is 50,200, and that is pledged donations from the Whitby pickleball community in general. And that's what Barry was referring to in his public comment, needing to round up those promised funds. And so the total agreement is $502,000. So, yay, we're going to get some outdoor pickleball courts.
That's awesome.
That is just fantastic news.
Yeah, good work, everybody. Matt,
Thank you.
Doug getting those applications out there.
Yeah, and Matt, thank you so much for presenting them and all the work that you did on putting those presentations together and actually delivering the content to the boards. Thank you.
Yes,
You're
thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, Department of Commerce grants.
Okay, so these are the grants for the South Whidbey Aquatic Center design project. We received confirmation that we will be awarded $360,000 from the Department of Commerce, which boils down to $349,200 after administration fees. So this is our second grant. And we, as I mentioned, we received our first reimbursement check for South Whidbey.
But the first reimbursement check was from the first grant,
Yeah.
right?
That's it for that grant. So the grant for the campground. So as you all know, we've been waylaid on our campground project. And I've talked to Allison again about how to go about requesting the final extension that only their director could approve. And she just emphasized that we need to do our, I don't remember what it's called, a progress report or something like that, a report stating where we're at. And we will have to give very clear reasoning for why it's been delayed and what progress we've made. And we'll need to do that in August, I think it was. Let me look up that email real quick.
Maybe something to the tune of a good faith effort of trying to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Document.
Yeah. So here's the email from her. So there's a progress report due in Prism, and then.
Make that bigger.
Mhm.
Strong rationale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just FYI, I sat in on their board, the last board meeting when they did the grant awards for the project we submitted. And there were 3 projects, I believe, that were subject to extension requests. And so it's not uncommon for this to go through, but it requires their board approval to go beyond where we are now.
Right. It's kind of a final level where specifically the director has to approve it. And so I believe it's actually in August that we need to make that argument that she needed that so that they could have it prepared for their October meeting. Okay.
Okay.
All right, local parks deferred maintenance grant. At the last board meeting, we had discussed putting a new pump and well upgrade on the deferred maintenance grant. But the upgrades discussed may subsequently end up needing to be replaced for the pool. After discussions with ARC architects regarding water access for the pool, we will likely need to include larger water system upgrades, so beyond what we would have been doing, including a pump to the park system. And then there's the campground to be considered too. The timeline for this grant has been pushed out, so that gives us a little bit more time. And there will need to be a resolution to approve the grant application in August. And the other project that we had considered for the deferred maintenance was a mower. So they both reach about $100,000, which is the limit. So we're going to be having a meeting with ARC and other people, Tom, to discuss the water situation. So basically the upgrades of getting water to the site would be about $500,000. And the discussion is, what we need to do, and do we want it to be, to upgrade the park in general as well as the campground? And if we do, will we put more like M&O funds towards that, or will it be completely towards the design or, the construction cost? So, which would take away other features in the design. So we'll be meeting to discuss all of this more. There's a lot of I don't knows, a lot of parts that we don't know about. But basically, it's looking at about $500,000. And
I'd say we're going to have to do something with fire flow.
he included fire flow in that. That was included in that $500,000 estimate.
I don't know, I think building new water takes a lot more than that. We don't have capacity right now, we have 100,000 gallons, but on a day like today, we had a fire overnight, that thing's dry from irrigating. So, a lot of unknowns, way too many unknowns. Give a guess on that yet.
That meeting's coming up next month.
They were waiting to get a little bit more information about the needs from their design people, and then we were going to schedule a meeting after that. Probably
So
in the next-
go
Just
ahead,
realized
Matt.
from this grant program standpoint, we can submit single projects like the staff has discussed, or we can submit a mix of projects. So if we end up saying, we want to spread it out over more initiatives or more areas of the park, we can do that as well. So I don't think there's any bias towards one or the other.
One project or another, is that what you're saying? One.
Right. Or if it's, we say we're dedicating the entire amount to one thing, like to the mower or to this, or we're going to spend 10,000 on A and 15,000 on B and 25,000 on C. I don't think there's any bias towards a bunch of small projects or one large expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Matt's email from last month in front of me here that outlined what was eligible, and this is a deferred maintenance project. So how are they going to feel about, well, a new pump and well upgrade?
Well,
And then ARC, is that
yeah,
going to kind of, are we pushing our luck trying to
well,
slide?
the fact that we have a small water system management plan now is the basis for this. It basically documents that we have a bunch of maintenance in the queue required on the water system in general. So we can reference that shows, there's maintenance required that, that aligns to that plan. And the fact that there's growth items contained in that is, I think, part of the acceptable scope. The fact that we're doing deferred maintenance to handle growth is something we can explain.
So Matt, do you feel like,
So
I'm
can I just continue? So it says deferred maintenance projects, and it also says activities are limited to those that do not disturb the ground to reduce implementation timelines and allow for activities across multiple sites.
Right. So they're saying, don't dig a hole if there's an existing hole and you got work to do in it, that's fine. But
Okay.
digging a hole and, involves potentially other things like, SEPA analysis and, you know, hydrology reports and septic studies and those kind of things. So that just don't disturb new ground in this work.
Okay.
You know, another large project that would make it real easy. We need an overlay of the entire parking area at the sports complex. Last I checked, it was like $130,000. You could put $100,000 towards that. What we have remaining in our budget, we could get that whole project knocked out. I mean, if that's a cleaner look, one large thing like that. Just a thought.
Yeah, I would say if we, the items that we were discussing with Tom last month, it just sounds as if we would be having to replace those subsequently. So if the pool upgrades happen. But I guess we'll have more information about that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the well right now, we don't have a back. Our main pump fails right now. We're closing the doors. So that is like a two-part. It's replacing a well. It's a well over 20 years old, a well pump that's functioning right now, but it's also bringing on the backup to usable backup well in case something catastrophic that's happened. So doesn't matter to me what you guys put in for as far as this grant goes. If you want one big project, I suggest the overlay of the sports complex. It's $100,000. The whole project's $130 roughly. And that's an easy. That's a really easy one. Well, maybe a little more difficult with trying to bring that back up to standards and things like that. How do you guys want to do it?
I think that's a good idea. Because we don't know exactly what we're going to do to yet. Well, do we know if the current water tank will be big enough for all the proposed projects? We don't know yet.
I mean, it was like a year ago when we started trying to work with Davido and figure out our small water system management plan expansion. I made the suggestion then to let's look at the whole project, everything that's going to be built out, to see if it's even built. We don't even know if the state's going to allow us to hook up to that to provide water for the pool project. Oh no, we haven't gone down the road. The infrastructure, we don't know right now. So, I mean, that's this meeting we're going to have. Maybe we'll get some answers, but I think we're going to have to bring Davido into look at the expansion of it.
Davido will be part of that meeting.
So right now, we got too many balls in the air to really know where we're at with that.
So again, I'm looking at the information that Matt gave us last month, and the applications are saying that they're due in early August. It does say parenthetically that that's an estimate.
Yeah, those dates changed.
What did they
Okay.
change to?
So we would need to approve a resolution at our next meeting, and then I think it's early September or something like that, but that it would be due.
Yeah, it slid by 1 month essentially. So we're going to have to decide and then submit from this meeting, but we have one more meeting to do it.
Thank you for the clarification.
We move on, or?
Yes, but it does seem that in the interest of really trying to get this 100,000 and do it from a standpoint of submitting an application that has a high level of certainty to it, that maybe the pump and well grade may not be our best option for selection.
Yeah.
So something to think
just-
about. I know we've got another month, but so let's seriously think about it. Carrie, if you could just, between you and Tom, if you could just send us out an email within the next, week or two, kind of a new priority list. I hear Tom saying that the overlay is high on the list. There were a couple of equipment issues that could be addressed. So if we could get that, so that when we meet in August, we're more on the same page.
Can the overlay be done in the fall or winter, or is that a summer and shoulder season?
Fall would be really tough right in the middle of soccer season.
Yeah, they can do it any time of year. I mean,
It needs to be dry.
it does be
So, yeah, so I would suggest summer. I don't know when this is awarded, how it's allocated. I kind of is, but
So the mower that we had discussed at the beginning, as part of our equipment replacement plan, it was going to start being financed. Am I pointing to the right one? Oh, you can't see.
Is it the 4,500 or the
yeah, it's 4,500.
4,500?
Yeah.
So we were,
25.
Oh, yeah, 25. So we were planning to finance that starting in 25. Be nice to not finance it.
okay.
Okay, I can, in a couple of weeks, Tom and I can try to get together a prioritization list.
Okay.
and if
Well, it looks like we've got two strong contenders, one at 100, one at 130. So which is the overlay or the mower? Is that what's at the top?
would anyone be able to do an overlay this late into summer?
It wouldn't be till next year, I would
Yeah,
assume.
if it's just turned in August by the time they go through the
Yeah.
prioritization or
It'd
awards,
be 24.
it's
Yeah,
gonna be next year.
And
I
then
think.
getting on people's schedules.
Yeah, so I think by that point, we would plan on, if the money's sitting there, we make sure we have enough money to do that whole entire project with money in our capital, which I think we've got a placeholder right now for some asphalt work next year. And basically plan on contacting, going out for bid, getting that finalized, and as soon as spring soccer's over, we would shut down and come in. It's probably a 1 to 2 day project and they're done. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and the award period goes to June 30th, 2025.
Oh,
So you got money.
okay.
So
okay.
Okay, so moving on.
Okay, so moving on to the South Woodby Aquatic Center. The Joint Aquatic Center Committee, JACC group, met again with architects. So they're basically meeting every other week, approximately, by themselves and then with ARC architects. So ARC architects provided a refined concept plan incorporating more era feedback. The updated plan was in the packet, and Boards are here. It's a little bit after this that has changed. And so schematic design is pretty much done, and ARC is moving on to cost estimating, which will further inform the design and will likely require further revisions to the design. And then there will be value engineering, which is new to me. So I guess we'll be prioritizing what's really important after the necessary items are covered. So one of the things will be, if the cost of the getting water to the site is, an additional $500,000, then that will mean some of these features may be pulled out. Okay, so I wish I had better, firmer figures on this, but in February, the board took these action to basically approve expenditures for schematic design of the aquatic facility up to the limit of the state funding authorization. So basically, we approved up through the grant that we had received.
The first grant.
The first grant, yes. So now we're moving to design development, and by ARC's estimates of cost that will occur, we currently have between the two grants from the Department of Commerce, almost enough to get us through design development just on the grants. And then I assume that the remaining phases of the architectural and engineering process would need to be covered by another grant or the bond, or a bond.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. When we submitted the request to Representative Paul and Shavers last year, we asked for the remaining amount, and then when they granted us the 360K, they were essentially funding it phase by phase. So, our 2024 budget request will be to the state will be for the next phase. For the remaining phases, just as the last one was. And I would guess that the next phase is likely what they would ultimately fund. It's just my guess. So the construction obviously is the subject of the bond consideration, but I think the 2024 state capital budget has a good potential to contain the next phase funding for the ARC project. ARC portion of the project.
Matt, when would the application for that take place?
Typically, it's prepared in December and finalized in January. We submitted last year something like the first or second week of January, and it's not complicated. It would essentially be resubmitting last year's application, taking out the funding that we did receive in 2023. So it's a standard form that they require, but what'll be most important is just our ongoing interface with our legislators. We had a meeting a few weeks ago, Jennifer and I, with Representative Paul, so he's fully aware of us and project and the initiative, the consideration we're taking now with the bond initiative. So maintaining and developing that relationship is probably most important, and the application is just a formality in the December-January timeframe.
So Matt, actually, here, just a minute, I'm going to pull up a document. Okay, so on the upper left, we have the two grants. After the 3% is taken out for administrative costs. And Matt, down here, can you see those where my cursor is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what Paul was calling out for me because I just wasn't quite sure, you know, how much we were looking at for getting us through design development. And so these are what he laid out for me. So as I understand it, if I'm, this right here, the 2066, this is approximately how much would not be covered in these two phases by the grant. So the grants. So it looks like if all of his calculations are correct here, which I'm leaning on his interpretation of it, we'll be shy, you know, a little over $2,000. Does that feel correct to you? Like, does that feel like those two grants are going to get us that far?
Yeah, it represents ARC reducing the cost of the design development phase by about 200,000. So, and you know, those costs were estimated by them before the project started, obviously as part of their quotation to us. And now the project has advanced far enough in this, as you indicated, schematic design is essentially done. So the design development phase is much more clearly understood at this point than it was when they quoted it. So I think it's much more accurate than it was, and I think the fact that it's covered is essentially what this state, our representatives were hoping for, and I think the fact that it is essentially covered here, I think is a great outcome.
So if we continue the process in the way that we did, then we would be looking for an approval of basically the continuation of the design project through DD. And last time you said to the amount of the grant awarded or the grant proceeds, I guess. So this time you may want to say that plus what you're willing to spend, at least another $3,000, I'd say.
Yeah, and maybe Chris, you'd be willing to do a motion, a follow on to your original motion that just extends through the monies received from the 2023 capital budget up to the amount in the most current estimate from ARC, because we could certainly cover that 2,000 by other means.
What will be the remaining design phases going forward?
So there's 3 additional phases. There's schematic design, design development. I think, Carrie, if you have their original quote somewhere, you can see the design development. The next one is a construction documents, I think they call it. And then the 4th one and the 5th one are essentially construction. So the bulk of the design is done after design development.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I could maybe get there.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want me to pull up the wording from last time?
That would be very helpful. Thank
It
you.
was a little extra, but you can sure, work around it. Where is the, is that it? Not it. Must have closed it.
And the elevated jogging track above the pool, that has been taken out, correct?
Not at this point.
Oh, no, okay.
Yeah, that's still, again, it has to do with their cost estimating and then seeing what we can make happen. At this point, it's still in there, correct, Matt?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear the question clearly.
The track is still in the design.
Yes.
I love the elevated jogging track like above a sports court. I was talking it over with my wife actually though, and she brought up a privacy thought of when someone's swimming, having someone running above you. Just floating that out there. I don't know if most people will be okay with it, or if there'd be some people that might be turned off by that.
So Jake, is the
Yeah.
concern that people would just be standing up above watching people swim?
Well, I would assume that we would have someone move them along, but yes, I mean, if you're in a public pool, you're in a public pool. You realize that there's going to be bodies next to you, but I don't think most public pools have eyes above them from all sides. So that's just
So
a thought.
the YMCA here in the Twin Cities, where my in-laws go, that I've gone with them, has a running track that is up above an open gym as well as the swimming pool. It's really cool. And the times that I've been there, people are walking, they're running. People aren't hanging out. It's not a place to hang out. You're moving. So, um, I guess what I'm just saying is that I've never had any weird vibes, and my mother-in-law's in the pool, and she's hasn't expressed any concern about people being up above. So it's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that at all, but just from personal experience using a similar situation,
Yeah, and
it,
and
it
just
didn't seem
FYI,
odd.
okay, and just
When you're
FYI,
in the
Jake,
pool, you're
sorry, I was
obviously
just gonna,
more can't be close.
yeah, sorry, I was just gonna mention there are state rules for setback. So there's some amount of setback from the water surface itself, where the edge of any kind of overhanging element like this track could be, so it's not going to be directly over the water. It's going to be set back. I think the number I've heard from them is like 12 feet. So, it's for viewing, but it's not, it's not going to be overhanging.
Okay, so Krista, I put up there.
How's this? I would like to make a motion for the extension of the contract with ARC Architects and their associated vendors for the completion of the schematic design for the proposed aquatics facility to the limit of the state funding authorization. Does that get it done? Because it's still schematic design, right?
No, it's design development.
It's, okay, so let me say that again.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for the extension of the contract with ARC Architects and their associated vendors for the progression of the design development for the proposed aquatic facility to the limit of the state funding authorization.
State funding authorization.
Authorization.
Okay, so
Does that get it done?
close. Okay, so maybe instead of say through design development, perhaps.
Okay, so a motion for the extension of the contract with ARC Architects and associated vendors for the completion of the design development phase of the proposed aquatic facility to the limit of the state funding authorization.
Okay, so we know that it's going to be short a little bit. So do you want to, and it's of course an estimate, so.
It's an estimate. And what percentage does that $2,000?
That's 99 point something percent.
Yes. So I feel like if the state funding, okay. How else can I say this?
I mean, you could just like authorize.
To the exhaustion of the, not to the limit, but to the exhaustion of the state.
And then some.
Yeah,
So,
I think we want to say, I mean, to do it because it's so close that we, based on the ARC estimate, current ARC estimate of cost for design development, that we fund the design development phase using state capital funds and other park funds as necessary. Since right now our current estimate is that's $2,000 out of $500,000. So fund it to the current estimate, which Carrie put up on the screen, which is 371, and then using the state capital monies as the primary source, and then other park monies to fund the small remainder. That way that we're saying fund design development, which is the outcome we want to get to. Yeah, there it
Because
is.
of the parking lot activation, I got, yeah. $2,000. $1,000.
they're not here to ask. Okay, so do we have alternative wording?
Is the purpose of this motion for the funding or for the contract?
Yeah, and it's just to allow us to continue to
Funding.
expend money
Yeah.
and pay ARC. So
So,
and it's to execute the state capital budget allocation to us in the time that we have. We have 2 years of for the appropriation. So this allows it to continue to flow. So we actually spend the money. You see what we're running up against in the campground project is that we may not be able to expend the money before they take it back. So the point of this is just to allow us to continue to flow the project forward and expend the money while it's available to us.
So, okay. The remainder could be, if needed, pulled out of capital fund. So depending on how much that is.
Right. So I mean, you could say just up to an additional $5,000 from the Parks Capital Fund to supplement the state capital authorization.
Yeah, that sounds good. And you could even, I would say more than 5,000 if you chose, because there will definitely be more than that in capital fund. So you could say
Do I need
up.
to have an amount?
I think it would be good to have a total figure somewhere. So whether it's an additional 10,000, Matt, just to,
I
Sure.
would say 10,000 should not come out of our capital fund to fund it. Like Park and Aquatics Foundation.
not the capital fund not the capital projects, but our other capital fund. The one that, yeah,
No water projects.
no,
Here
it's,
being
no, the actual,
safe.
those confusing terms that we have, the capital fund, which was mostly funds for Max Walton Trails, which we have budgeted $10,000 for finishing up Crestland Trail stuff, and then we can use the funds for other capital projects. Which this
Okay.
would qualify, I would say.
So let me try this again. I will make a motion for the extension of the contract with ARC Architects and associated vendors through the design development phase for the proposed aquatic facility to the limit of the state funding authorization, and also up to an additional 10,000 from the district's capital fund.
Needed.
As needed. Does that get it done?
Makes sense to me. How about you, Matt?
Sure.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second the motion.
Right, it has been moved and seconded to extend the contract with ARC Architects and associated vendors for the completion through, Carrie, can you make that go away?
Make what go away?
Thank you. You had formatting stuff up there. All right. So it has been moved and seconded for the extension of the contract with ARC Architects and associated vendors for completion through design development phase for the proposed aquatic facility to the limit of the state funding authorization, and also up to an additional $10,000 from district's capital fund as needed. All those in favor say aye.
Jake, I.
Krista, I.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion passes. All right, is there any further discussion before we move on?
Matt, could you ask the Aquatics Foundation or Marnie, if she's listening, if they think that track brings up any red flags above a pool?
Sorry, say that again, Jake.
Oh, could you ask Marnie or the Aquatics Foundation, just ask if that track above a pool brings up any red flags to anybody else?
Okay.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So no, and quite the opposite. There's many board members who think it's really a great and important addition that's going to bring something for non-swimmers that's going to be very exciting. So if anything, people are excited about it and nobody had any concerns that I know of.
Okay. That's good to hear. I love elevated jogging tracks, had one in college. it was just the fact that it was over a pool where people are obviously dressed different, that it was just and then my policing in the past just made me think of potential issues. But that's good to hear from you, Marnie, and all involved in the aquatic foundation. So
Cool.
thank you.
All right. Carrie, is this where we're going to hear from Jim Nelson?
Yes. Let's see. Uh-oh, I can see the memos missing. I'll be there shortly. I'm just waiting for it to finish up. There we go. Okay. So this is regarding a recommendation to place the Aquatic Recreation Center bond measure on the November 23 general election ballot. This is based on a careful review of the pros and cons of the general election ballot versus a special election ballot in the spring of 24. In the end, there is a greater chance to hear the voice of the population of the district at the general election, with between 9,000 and 11,000 voters expected to turn out for that event. Special election voters turnouts historically have fallen in the range of approximately 7,000 voters. For reference, the school district bond measure will be on the same general election ballot, as will all the mayoral positions on the island and several of the school board positions. It is expected that these additional voters will reflect the strength of the support for the Aquatic Recreation Center bond that we found in the community survey done as part of the feasibility study. 71% calling it the highest priority for the community that the survey allowed. To proceed with the November 23 bond measure requires approval of the resolution at the July 19th meeting of the board in order that the measure could be filed by the August 1st deadline for the general election. I think probably Matt or Jennifer can maybe talk a little bit more about their meeting. And then we have a presentation by Jim Nelson, who I can see is here and ready for that. Matt or Jennifer, did either of you want to say anything more about this?
Yeah, we had this meeting with Representative Paul. Jennifer hosted it in her office and I dialed in. He was there for another meeting, and we just asked for his thoughts on this topic in general and gave him a little bit of the history. He was obviously aware of the project. And, you know, he I think took an amount of time with us to be able to reflect on it, and generally came up with a recommendation pushing us to November. You know, it wasn't a direction or guidance. It was just his thoughts and feedback. And Jennifer, maybe you can give your personal feelings having been there with him face to face.
Yeah, he was very encouraging. Matt and I shared with him our concerns about being on the ballot at the same time as the school board running their second initiative for 79 million. And he did not see any issue or any problems in having both of those initiatives on the same ballot, and that with a broader voting pool, if you will, bigger group, that it provided that the education was done properly, which I think we're doing a great job of at this point, that he did not see them as competing, or that either would be a detriment to the other, and was actually very encouraging in steps that we have taken already to work with the school district in cross promotion.
Yeah, and I think that what is mentioned in that memorandum, you know, it to me is important, and I think he highlighted this in the conversation, the fact that the general election ballot gives the public a greater voice, because the additional turnout, you know, depending on the election, is somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000. I would anticipate this election will be in the range of 10,000 or so versus that special election, which is 7,000, and that idea of giving the public a greater voice, I think is important, just personally. And so he was encouraging when it came to that. And I think I echo what Jennifer said about the education. The foundation partnership has been an amazing resource in educating the public. We've gone through the surveys, the feasibility study, and we got 4,000, more than 4,000 voters represented in the feasibility results. The original park survey was another 700. Then the activity, you know, through the ARC design process with different, you know, articles in the paper and our social media presence, and now the presence at Bayview Farmers Market now. You know, the dialogue has been, I think, good with the public over a long period, and the average voter is aware of the project, I think, through that range of education efforts, and I think that groundwork, you know, sets us up to have the most, you know, the most representative input in that general election cycle, because the turnout's higher.
All right,
Very
if
good.
there's no further discussion around that or any other questions, shall we turn it over to Jim?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And yeah, thanks to Jim. Jim's been talking to several park districts today. I think just came out of another meeting with Sideview Parks and Rec. So really appreciate your time, Jim, and as a chance to kind of walk through the details of moving forward with this if we choose to do so.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So commissioners and staff, honored to be on the call. I'm Jim Nelson with DA Davidson, bond underwriter. I've worked on the previous bond financings, non-voted and voted for the district. So you're in a great financial position. If we turn to slide 2, I always hate to start off with the bad news, but I will. You can see the interest rate chart on slide 2, thanks to our friends at the Federal Reserve. And as you all know from the news, the Federal Reserve is trying to bring down inflation. And so they've had 10 short-term interest rate hikes, which has impacted long-term rates. You can see at the bottom of slide 2 on the interest rate chart, there's a data point identified, August 6, 2020. That's the all-time historic low in the last 50 years. And then you see the data point, December 31st, 2021. Well, the Federal Reserve started implementing the interest rate hikes starting in the first quarter of 2022. And so far, there's been 10 interest rate hikes. You can see the impacts. It hit the peak, came down, and then we thought, okay, the effect is over with, but then it's been bouncing around a little bit up and down. Some of it's related to the recent news on, some of the bank issues, specifically with Signature Bank and a few of the other ones, Silicon Valley Bank. And so that created some volatility. Optimistic that maybe the Fed will do 1 or 2 more interest rate hikes and then they'll be done. Inflation's come down quite a bit from roughly, well, it's down right around 4%. So the Federal Reserve is accomplishing their goals, but I just thought I'd want to lay that groundwork before we turn to slide 3. And now you can see the estimated bond levy rates. So your ballot title would say 29 years or less for a par amount not to exceed 27 million. But the rate that you're actually quoting is for the 25-year financing, which is at 17 cents. The estimated annual increase on a $500,000 home is $85 a year. The estimated monthly increase is about $7.08. And the monthly estimate really is the recommended way to communicate it to the voters, because a lot of people compare that monthly cost to what they're paying for their monthly health club membership. Normally, when you finance the longer, going over 27 years or 29 years, you would see those levy rates drop maybe from 15 cents down to 16 cents down to 15 cents. But just because of the interest rate environment, yours actually went up a little bit. But it provides flexibility. We're hopeful that interest rates will be lower by the time you price these bonds. But I think, a conservative estimate is to quote 17 cents, par amount 27 million, and then the estimated monthly increase on a $500,000 home is $7.08. If it was $1 million home, then you just double that. So then be $14.16.
Jim, can I make one quick comment?
Sure.
Yeah, just for the information of the board, this is the number that has been communicated in the voter education process, around $7 a month. So I think despite the volatility there, the number is consistent with what we've been talking about. So
yeah, that's great.
May I also interrupt, Jim? This is Jennifer.
Oh, sure.
We haven't gotten there yet, but I do want to point out that in our proposition, that with the explanatory statement, it's talking about a $600,000 home. So I think we need to get our ducks in a row.
yeah, it should be 500,000 because that matches what the school district is communicating.
So we need to adjust our proposition then.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
I'm just doing some quick math here. If it was a $600,000 home, then that would be $850 a month. Annual would be $102 a year.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do, Jim, is adjust our proposition back to the 500 mark. As Matt was just saying, that's what the school has been putting out as well. Is that what you said, Matt? That they're adjusting?
That's correct.
That they're talking?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. So if we're on the ballot with them side by side, we absolutely want to have the same, relative reference. So
yeah, apples to apples comparison. And it's Carrie, I don't know if you can scroll up a little bit more, but there's a footnote at the bottom. It says, based on the Island County assessor reports, the district's average annual assessed valuation growth rate was 4.61% for the last 15 years, 6.53% for the last 10 years, and 11.01% for the last 5 years. So I think that also supports the assumed growth scenario in under the assumptions on number 4, where it's assuming a 4% annual growth rate, which means the bond payments increase at 4% per year. Sort of the idea of growth paying for growth. So your payments start out a little bit lower and then they increase at 4% per year. It's a very common practice, with school districts, fire districts, cities, park districts, and others. So let me know if you have any questions on that. Usually the next question after I explain that is, okay, what happens if we don't achieve that 4% in 1 year? Do we have to make up the financial difference? And the answer there is no. It's just an estimate. And the county treasurer and assessor will reset that levy rate each year to cover the bond payment. So, compared to other districts, it's a very reasonable request that you're asking. I just got out of the Sideview Metropolitan Park District meeting, and I'm sitting in their conference room. They're going to the voters for $21,345,000, and just as a comparison, their estimated levy rate is 16 cents per thousand for a 30-year financing term. So, that's right in line. Ideally, we like to see estimated bond levy rates at 25 cents or less. And so you're certainly hitting that target. Any questions on slide 3? Okay, we go to slide 5. That just shows you the ballot dates. Your bond would be on the November 7th election date. But one thing to keep in mind is, of course, you have the deadline to file the election resolution with the Island County Auditor's Office by August 1st. And the ballots will be mailed out right around October 20th. That's the number you should really be focusing on. That's the date you should be really focusing on and planning to complete all your voter education, mailers, community meetings prior to October 20th. We find that roughly 1/3 of the voters will fill out their ballot within the first week of receiving it by mail. And the last slide, slide 6, shows the calculation of your legal debt limit. And again, with voter approval, you'll have approximately 62.6 million remaining voted debt capacity. Of that amount, you could do up to 27 million on a non-voted basis. But just from an education standpoint, non-voted bond payments are paid out of your regular property tax revenues. So one has to be very careful not to take on too much non-voted debt, because that could impact, future adds to staff, operating costs, and things like that. But if you did have a cost overrun of a couple million, I think that gives you comfort that, you could make up that difference. If you can't get more grants, then maybe, if need be, you do a non-voted bond. But I believe that ARC Architects is factoring in a comfortable contingency amount.
Jim, could you give us a little education on a non-voted bond? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's also known as a commissioner bond or a limited tax general obligation bond. If you're a city, it's known as a councilmatic bond. And so, we always say do an affordability analysis before you take on a non-voted bond, because those non-voted bond payments are coming out of your regular property tax revenues. So you have to really kind of do a deep dive and go, if we were to do a non-voted bond, what could we comfortably afford, to basically take a portion of our regular property tax revenues and use that for a bond payment. So usually it's for the smaller amounts, equipment purchases and things. But then you also have to look at it and go, okay, what are our future adds to staff? What's the increase in operating costs? Do we have, some non-voted debt that's maturing, which might mean you could afford it? Do you have new revenue sources that you'll be coming into?
Right. It's essentially a bond that we issue with a vote of the board, and we pay back from the park budget. The public doesn't pay it back by another special means. So, it was used, most recently, it was used by Port Angeles when they did their pool project in 2017. They issued something like 7 million, I think, in non-voted bonds, but the way they paid us back is through the city budget. So, if you have another funding source that can pay bonds back like that, it works for us. It's not a significant option because we don't have the bandwidth in our M&O, as you see, to pay back, any significant bond that we did not take to the public.
And it would be a risky proposition to try and leverage some sort of a gap in a grant cycle seek, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of times the next question is, oh, could we consider drawing down cash? And that's another risky proposition because you need those cash reserves, like a rainy day fund. And, quite frankly, if you drew your cash down too much, it could impact your rating grade, and all of a sudden you could be downgraded. That raises your interest cost, and then that is negative press. Right now you're rated AA minus, which is a really good rating for a park and recreation district of your size. You're known as a junior taxing district, so that's really a great accomplishment. And assuming voter approval, then we would work with you and coach and prepare you for another rating presentation, and hopefully get a rating upgrade, which again would be fantastic for the district and the taxpayers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Jim, could you tell me, what is that debt capacity based on? Like what?
It's a calculation on your current assessed valuation. And so the non-voted amount is 3/8 of 1% of your assessed valuation. Then you subtract out any non-voted debt you have, whether it's publicly issued bonds, bank financing for capital improvements, equipment, or equipment leases. And I think, Carrie, do you have any outstanding non-voted debt at all?
We have some bank loans.
Okay. So I don't have that. What would you say the principal balance is outstanding?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I can check my records. I'm guessing, probably not more than $1 million or $2 million. So let's say it's $2 million, then that brings your non-voted debt capacity from 27 million to 25 million. So the easiest way to, I'm just looking at your loan payment. Oh, I see, you've got some, yeah, equipment leases and things I wasn't aware of. The easiest way to explain non-voted debt from a homeowner standpoint is it's sort of like credit card capacity. We all get these applications in the mail, but if we applied for them all, we most likely go bankrupt. So it's, it's credit card capacity, but it's really comes back to what can you really afford. So just because you have non-voted debt capacity of 25 million or 27 million doesn't necessarily mean you can afford. And I think in your case, you wouldn't be able to afford a $27 million non-voted bond because it would just strap the district and you'd have to cut services and you really wouldn't have, it would impact salaries. It might have to lay people off. So that's why you're going to the voters for a special excess levy over and above your regular levy rate.
But again, it's that the excess levy debt capacity is a combination of the assessed value of our area, the other debt that is out there by other organizations, as well as our own debt internally. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, but it does not include the debt of, it only includes your debt. So it doesn't include, so we've already included the assumed $27 million bond.
Yeah.
And so it's just for your district and like, the city of Langley, the school district, the county, they don't impact your debt capacity.
Okay.
So it's a good thing. It's what we call a credit positive from a rating presentation perspective, that you have a very small amount of non-voted debt and that you're looking at, say, a $27 million voted bond, but you're still going to have remaining debt capacity after that of approximately 60 million, 62 million. So that tells a rating analyst that you're not stretched so thin to the limit that you've got flexibility. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. And just so you know, we've paid off one bond, so that is different. But
Yeah. And is that Krista asking the question?
no, that was Carrie.
Carrie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so anyway, you're in a good position. And because of how the district has grown and your higher assessed value, that means it's a lower levy rate, and that makes it more affordable for the taxpayer. So I think your timing is very good. I can't remember, Matt, if we talked about it, where assuming voter approval, would you issue the 27 million in 2 series?
Yeah, we've been talking to ARC about that specific topic because, the ability of the project to expend all those funds, in one window is probably not realistic. So I think we had talked to them about the idea of a split issuance where we issue, some percentage of them, say half initially, and then, 12 months, 18 months later, we issue the remainder so that the funds are available, when at an appropriate time based on the construction timeline and the expenses associated with that.
Yeah, and that's a benefit to the taxpayer. So, let's say that voters approve it November 7th, 2023, you would receive, let's say you decide to issue 50% right out of the gate. So that'd be 13.5 million. You get your money either late December 2023 or sometime in the say by February, March of 2024. And so then the IRS expects you to spend the bond proceeds in a 36-month period. And then the second series might be issued, say, as Matt mentioned, a year, 18 months later for the balance of $13.5 million. But by doing that too, it also gives you some time to possibly pursue additional grant monies and some of those things. So if you were successful in getting more grants, just because the voters approved 27 million doesn't mean that you have to issue all 27 million. But it just kind of builds in some flexibility. A lot of times we'll get that question. Okay, what happens, a year or two later after we've issued the entire bond and we get a grant? And so this accommodates that option so that if you did get a grant, then you could just, if you choose to, lower the amount of the second series of bonds.
Yeah, and if you remember from the grant presentations we did to the state, the Aquatic Center project was one of the candidate projects, but we pulled it after the initial grant review because we weren't far enough down the design timeline.
Oh, okay.
So, so that was a LWCF Land Water Conservation Fund grant request. So that's a good example of what you mentioned, Jim. So if the voters approved the measure, and we then with that approval go back to the RCO in the next cycle, which is a year from now, then we would meet their criteria for project readiness at that point. And I think it's reasonably likely that we could get a grant from LWCF. The Port Angeles project was successful in that. So then that additional grant money would allow us to reduce the bond issuance in the second half by the amount that we receive from the state grant. So, as part of the education of the public, we're asking for up to 27 million. But if we're successful with some of these other things like the RCO, which I think is highly likely, if we get voter approval, then that can reduce that amount to the public.
Matt, any guesses on what the potential grant amount would be or the range?
They adjust the development limit every year. It was in the past 500,000 for development, but there's a decent chance that it's higher than that. I haven't looked at that limit in a little while, but somewhere between 500,000 and $1 million for the development portion of the LWCF grant program.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Any other questions for me?
I'd say thank you, Jim, for taking the time in another Park and Rec District's conference room to talk to us.
Oh yeah, I was mentioning to Cyview tonight that it's really interesting on the number of aquatic center projects that are being considered out there. So you're in good company, and I think some of it, just my own personal opinion, is there's sort of a renewed interest, renewed support for local park and rec services after COVID. I think people, at least I saw it, I live in Mill Creek, and I just saw people using our local parks a lot more.
Jim, this is Carrie. Could you speak a little bit more about the rating presentation and what we will need to do to prepare for that, and just all of the financial aspects?
Oh, sure. So the short answer is we'll take care of all of it for you, Carrie, and coach and prepare staff What happens, assuming voter approval, then we work with bond counsel. There's the drafting of the preliminary official statement. So probably a few weeks, I would say a month before the election, I would send you an information request and a financial template to prepare. And then within a few weeks after the election, to have you complete that. And then we all start drafting these documents. Once the draft preliminary official statement is in a near final form, then we use that information and draft a rating presentation for Standard & Poor's. It's about a 35-page document. It'll answer about 90% of the questions. And then we have a rehearsal conference call with key staff members and a commissioner of the district to talk about philosophy of the board and how well staff and the commissioners communicate and work together. But before then, we coordinate a lengthy set of documents that will go to Standard & Poor's. So your last 3 audits, most recent budget, strategic plan. Carrie and I were talking about, I think, maybe updating your financial management policy, which is helpful. And so we send out all that information and then we have a rehearsal conference call with all of you, and it's about a 2-hour call, and it's the longest you'll ever hear me talk, but I'll go through what the likely questions are. We practice the answers, and we go through the draft rating presentation page by page, and then approximately 2 to 3 business days later, then we have the formal rating presentation via conference call or Zoom, and it takes about 90 minutes. And 7 business days after that, then you get the rating grade. And then typically about 2 weeks after that, we're marketing the bonds for 2 weeks to potential investors. So we're trying to set the interest rates as low as we can while still getting orders for the bonds. And then you get your money, say, $13.5 million upfront. That would be wired to the Island County Treasurer's account on behalf of the district. So one thing yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, one question that comes up sometimes is like, okay, we're going to the voters for 27 million. We understand there's financing costs. What's the net amount for the construction fund? And the answer there is 27 million. So the financing costs, I'm known as the bond underwriter. There's the bond attorney, there's the rating agency. All those costs essentially are built into the interest rate. So it's a nice message to the voters that, yeah, if you approve 27 million, then you'll get 27 million in the construction fund.
And could you tell me what would be the timeline of, pulling together the financial documents and the rating presentation, like assuming it passed in November?
I'd say roughly 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months, but we like to build flexibility so that, there's some flexibility with regard to market timing. There's some weeks where it's better to be pricing bonds versus others.
And would that be starting like in December or January?
Yeah, we'd send you that information request in early October, and then, at your leisure, have you complete that like by, I'd say, a week or 2 after the November election. And then from that date, when you have completed all that information, then your financing could be in place roughly 2.5 months after that.
Okay.
And so related to that, we would provide you a number for the estimated 2024 bond payment to meet the county treasurer's deadline of November 30th to be on the tax collection roll. And then when we set the final rates, we just make sure that first payment doesn't exceed the number we provided to you in the county.
So Jim, there's a lot of moving parts there. You did a wonderful job of explaining it. Do you have a handout, a flow chart, something that you could provide to us that just kind of outlines all of that information that we can?
Oh yeah,
I was
yeah.
trying to take notes, but that was a lot.
Oh
I
yeah.
have this.
The
I can send you this presentation. Would that cover it?
You already sent me
yeah.
the
What I can
presentation.
do
It
is
didn't
actually
outline this whole flow that he just went through.
I can put together from a high level. I can put together a little Excel worksheet we have that nails it down to like 12 steps and 12 dates from start to finish. And then
Perfect.
I could provide you more detail. And if you want, I could provide you like a example of a rating presentation, which is pretty exciting. It really kind of gives you an appreciation for all the hard work that staff does and why clean audits and budgeting and strategic planning are so important.
Hmm. Yeah, this I'm sure that Matt has been through this multiple times, and I can assume that he's going to be the commissioner that's going to be on the presentation team. But for the rest of us commissioners, as well as Carrie, this is our first time. So,
Yeah, no, I'll do that. And I can provide other examples too, not to overwhelm you, but I can show you examples of the typical rating questions. But I would caution all of you and Carrie, don't, don't spend any time at this point answering those questions because the draft rating presentation that's 35 pages long, that'll answer about 90 to 95% of the questions.
mhm.
So don't, don't spend any time on that. I had someone from a municipality where I sent that to them, and I think they spent a whole weekend answering all the questions. I felt bad for them.
Oh, um, regarding about updating our financial policies that you and Carrie have touched on in your own discussions, is that a recommendation, or have you reviewed our financial policies and there are some things that were flags to you? How big of a bite is this financial policies review? How much? I'm just kind of trying to chunk down time and energies.
Yeah, I sent Carrie some what the rating analysts would call robust kind of gold standard policies. They're about 13 pages long. And a lot of it is formalizing things that you're already doing when you think about how you budget, how you your your clean audits. It just calls certain things out and formalizes that. As far as I can't remember, Carrie, are you on a 1 year or 2 year audit cycle?
2 year.
Yeah, so it would just call that out. You're on a 2 year audit cycle. It would call out, as you all know, that when your budget is due, that your unaudited financials are due at the uh, state auditor's office by May 30th each year. But then it would also have some other suggestions like having an unrestricted cash reserve as a percent of your annual expenses, such as 25% per year or greater. So we would look at your historic financials to see what you've hit, and then help you with that. It has to be something that you feel comfortable with. But like if you have an equipment replacement plan, a strategic plan, there'll be some questions about like the succession plan. So that's why there's power in numbers to have additional staff on that call, even if they don't have to say that much. Um, but yeah, some of the hot topics now are what's your succession plan? What happens if someone like Carrie left? Then, who picks up the ball? And then that's why it's important to have the commissioner on a call to talk about how well you communicate. They'll want to see examples of a monthly financial report that's submitted to the commissioners. So, it's all good things. It puts staff and commissioners on the same page. It's a helpful document for new commissioners that come in. But the reason why I'm such a proponent of it is I spent one weekend reviewing financial policies for the city of DuPont, and they updated their financial management policy. Usually when you get a rating grade, they'll say in that rating report they don't expect the grade to change in 2 years. And City DuPont had 2 rating upgrades in less than 2 years. And the second one, it was called out in the rating report, was because they updated their financial management policy.
Yeah, so the benefit to us is that we would see a lower interest rate potentially on the
Yep.
bond issues and a lower cost to the public. So I think it's time well spent, and I think there's enough, as Jim was describing those things, those are a lot of things that we do already. We have those fundamental principles with our reserve fund levels and our ending cash balance and those things that we talk about on our annual budgeting cycle. So I think most of these things are in place, and maybe we need to formally document that here's our annual budget schedule, because we don't have that formally documented anywhere. It's our practice and our historical practice, but to have it in a codified in our procedures maybe. But so I think in general we're achieving all of these objectives. We just may need to write it down or document it in a way that we haven't in the past.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like we need a review and some tweaking, and as you said, Matt, some codifying of practices that we already have. So it's work, yes, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a heavy lift. Is that your
Yeah,
thought as well, Matt?
yeah, and it'll be a partnership between me and Carrie primarily, with then involvement from the board as we need to, issue some new document or, maybe institute a procedure that we see as a best practice from something that Jim shares with us. So I think it'll be the two of us working together on it, then with, reaching out to the board when we need to put these things into place formally.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm happy.
reflecting back on our audit that we had last year, and that we came through that audit really quite nicely. And so that's kind of where my head is that this feels more like a tweak, and I just am seeking validation of that. So
Yeah, and I'm happy to come up for a commissioners meeting when you get to kind of the near final form, and I'll be working with Matt and Carrie, and I can give suggestions and edits and review based on the other ones I've seen, and then the commissioners would adopt it. Ideally, it would be nice to adopt it. I'd say maybe before November 1st, just to have it in place. I've had some municipalities who literally adopt a new financial management policy 2 days before a rating presentation, and that's okay, but it just doesn't look as good.
I imagine for us, some of the pieces are being incorporated into our budgeting process now, so it would be a part of our November board meeting would be, well, that's kind of late game, but some of them we're already implementing, but maybe not writing the policy
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. And
So,
like an equipment replacement plan, you might not have it in place, but you could just call it out that it's a goal to develop a equipment replacement plan, strategic plan. Oh, I see they
yeah,
like to
so,
see a capital improvement plan, equipment replacement plan for 6 years or longer.
yeah. So I think does what we're looking at here, do you see my screen?
Yeah, no, that looks good. Yep.
But yeah, okay. Because that's what we've been working on, is that and extending our forecast an additional year to be 6 years as well. So that's part of the budgeting process,
Yeah,
right,
no,
this
that's
year.
great. Yeah, no, that's
So,
fantastic.
so I think all of those things are doable. Um, as far as the updating the policies go. It's time that we don't have right now.
Oh, on the
I'm
financial
saying,
management policy?
yeah, I'm saying this more to the commissioners. Um, I would expect a ton of help from Jim, and I know you've provided me with some good information and good direction. I'm concerned about staff actually having time to do these things.
Yeah, and you know what? I can come up and sit down with you and Matt and go, I'll look at, because you do have one policy right now, is that correct?
Do you mean a general policy manual? Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah,
Yes, we do have financial policies, and it's more than 13 pages.
yeah. So then I can look at that. I know it was actually sitting under a stack. I saw it just before I left today. I can look at that. I can look at the ones that I call the gold standard, and then just come up with you and Matt and just kind of highlight it. But a lot of times it's just sort of tweaking some of those things, adding it in, and you know, maybe just a couple hours worth of work, and then just the review process to make sure that that fits in for your district and your goals. But the other thing too, I find, or I hear from a lot of municipalities after they go through this, it's like, oh wow, okay, this is really just formalizing a lot of the things that we're already doing. And from a rating analyst perspective, they love to hear about an unrestricted cash reserve goal, because then it tells them that all of a sudden a municipality isn't going to you know draw down cash just because um, they they want to. And so that it puts everybody on the same page, so that new commissioners, new staff members understand the reasons why there's a minimum cash reserve, and understand, okay, here's the audit process, here's the budget process, here's the equipment replacement plan. And it's also an education piece. It lays out the types of debt that a park and rec district can enter into. So we'll make it easy for you, Carrie.
Something is going on with the speaker.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm getting some sort of, see what happens.
Just any other questions for me on this presentation?
I don't think so. It's been very helpful.
Oh, thanks. And then did you want to talk about the resolution?
Sure.
And I
I
assume that,
I want to, oh, go ahead.
I assume the bond attorney's not on the call. If they are, I would defer to them.
Oh, no, I think no.
Okay, so the resolution basically talks about the maximum amount up to 27 million for a term of, sorry, I had it, of 29 years or less. And then there's certain number of words that you're legally allowed to put in the ballot description. So this document was prepared by the district's bond attorney, Deanna Gregory of Pacifica Law Group. But I've reviewed it and given comments, and so I think it looks good. It's the standard form.
Hold on a second. Let me pull it up if you'll just give me a second to get there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so there's the front page. You can see maximum amount of 27 million. On page 1, which I think is the third page in, yeah, there we go. Again, talks about the election on November 7th, 2023 for the issuance of unlimited tax general obligation bonds. So assuming voter approval, this would be a special excess levy that's not counted against your regular levy rate. There's nothing that can ever interfere with a voted bond payment. The only thing that could ever interfere would be an act of war or like a catastrophic earthquake. And it's called unlimited because the county treasurer assessor will reset that levy rate every year to cover the bond payment plus any assumed delinquency. We've assumed, to be conservative, we've assumed a 4% delinquency, meaning you're only collecting 96% the first few years. That adds another penny to it. So that's just a conservative number. And because you're a junior taxing district, there's, proration gets to be a long, complicated answer, but with a special excess voter approved bond levy, it's not subject to proration. But anyway, page 1 talks about, the new aquatic recreation facility be located on the district property, located in Community Park at the Max Welton Road entrance. Page 2 talks about the capital improvements, various other legal ease. Page 3, authorization of the bonds, again, not to exceed 27 million for a term not to exceed 29 years. It says proceeds of the bonds will be used for capital costs of the project, including the costs of property acquisition, including leasing and acquiring purchase options, engineering, design, demolition, other site preparation, planning, financial, legal, etc. And then construction of the facility, including all necessary equipment, etc. So the thing you remember on bonds is you can only use the money for capital improvement purposes. You can't use the money for any operating costs. However, the one exception is you could use bond proceeds during the construction period to pay for a construction manager, or if you designated a certain staff member to be the construction manager, then essentially you could have that portion of that person's salary paid with those bond proceeds just during the construction period. Whenever you issue bonds, you must have a reasonable expectation to spend the bond money within 36 months of the date you receive the money. So that's why issuing it in 2 series is beneficial too, to meet that 36-month spend down. Page 5 shows Proposition 1, shows the ballot title that the voters would see there in the middle of the page. Again, this proposition authorizes the district to design, develop, and construct an aquatic recreation center, including pools, multi-purpose rooms, and recreation and staff space, up to 27 million of general obligation bonds maturing within 29 years from issuance to finance such center, and to levy annual excess property taxes to repay such bonds.
I'm sorry, Jim, I'm not with you. I'm kind of probably making people sick. I'm trying to find where you're at right now.
Oh, page 5, 1/3 of the way down.
So I don't think my page 5 is the same as your page 5.
Oh, yeah, it's, let's see, your section 4. Yeah, go to the next page.
Further?
Yeah. Oh, you're going to just above section 5. There you go. Yeah, right there. That's what I was talking about. That's basically the ballot proposition that the voters in the jurisdictions of South Whidbey Park and Rec District, that they're going to read on their ballot. And I know that, Matt had some comments on it. So Matt, you jump in with, I guess, any comments.
I'd just say that this reflects a couple of revisions to help adjust it to the actual plan. So much of it is standard text to protect the public and the district, and has the details of the actual financing. So I think it's, this has gone through board or staff and board review input from TA Davidson, and now Pacifica has gone smooth with it. So I'm highly confident that it's ready to approve should we decide to do that.
I think that we identified, Jim, that there were the explanatory statement still there are some items that we want to tweak there, but we don't
Okay.
need, from what I understand, we don't need to approve that today at this meeting, based on my conversation with Deanna.
Yeah.
However, in addition to approving the resolution, there is a pro and con committee item that we do have to approve before, along with submitting everything else, we need to do that. And that's not prepared at this time because we don't officially have a pro and con committee. And so my understanding, if we approve the resolution this evening, we would need to schedule a special meeting to approve the pro and con item between now and
Yeah.
August 1st.
My understanding is the legislation changed, and so now a municipality is supposed to, of course, it's easy to get the pro committee, but then you're also supposed to go, oh, let's reach out and find a con committee. I was just reviewing a bunch of ballot measures on August 1st on a website, and it was interesting. Most of them didn't have con committee statements, but there were a few, and some of them are like my fire district customers, and I'm really kind of surprised. Usually it's a slam dunk for a fire district. Why would you turn down public safety? But yeah, there are some con committees out there, and I'll be interested to see how those municipalities fair with the voters. But yeah, the bond attorney will help you. And some of the bond attorneys or district attorneys actually wrote the pro committee statement for the municipality. So I think Deanna's office probably could help you out a lot on that. I'm happy to review it. But then there's the question of the con committee. Are you aware of any organized no vote committee on this issue?
No. I
Yeah,
did speak with one individual who provided that for a past bond, and he said he would be willing to do that again. I'm not sure what we would call him a committee. Um, But, so someone has said that they would do it. That said, they're not entirely well right now, so I'm not sure that asking that of him right now is the best choice, but anyways.
you mean
So,
for a pro committee or a con?
um,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then you can also have rebuttals too. So, but yeah, I think Deanna Gregory of Pacifica can really help out a lot on that. And I'm happy to review and give comments. And then it's a case by case, depending on the jurisdiction, whether you might say people come out of the woodwork or not to volunteer to do a con. I guess basically you advertise it, and if you don't get a con committee, then you just move forward, and the con committee portion of the voters pamphlet is just blank. And so the ones I looked at today, a lot of them did not have con committees.
And Carrie,
no,
there was some information that I feel like you sent it to me that talks about how Island County works, and that if we don't have something submitted, I'm sorry, I don't have it here with me in Minnesota, but there was something in there about the county would also try
Yeah,
and
that's
get a
correct.
statement before the pamphlet is printed.
correct. I think it's yes, but I think there's the expectation that we're making a solid effort to be
I think it would look good on
balanced.
us if we tried to let the community give pros and cons. I think that would reflect well on us for trying to.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
know that was one of the critiques of the school board bond was that they didn't feel like they had enough time to pull together the con committee.
I remember reading that too.
is Eric on the call?
No.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and again, you make that effort. If you don't get anyone for the con committee, which I think is good, then all it says is no con committee, and that's fine.
By August 1st?
So, so
I'm
the
trying to
deadline for
find.
having that is by August 1st, is that correct?
I don't know that for sure. I'll
Yeah,
find that.
I kind of got two different answers to that question, and it was kind of like August 1st and maybe a week later. So I was
Okay.
putting up August 1st as, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find that email that had the link. Too many emails. Okay, well, I don't want to sit here, but yeah, there's a form to be filled out. And there is something that has to be signed by you guys about that, I guess, even if it's empty. So again, my understanding is we'd have to have a special meeting to pull that off by August 1st.
Yeah. Yep.
And just for FYI, for the last measure, Doug had me coordinate with the committees and through the submittal process of the ballot information to the county through the county website. So I'm familiar with that process and can coordinate that. Again, we just got to resurrect kind of what we had communicated. I have some of those emails with the committee members just to give them instructions, and then with the, you know, they do the actual submittal to the county through the county elections website.
Matt, has the district ever had any organized opposition?
Yeah, as Carrie mentioned, she was speaking to a community member who had been the con committee for the last initiative. So yes, yeah, we have, and that content has been in the voter guide. So
Okay.
there's not a current campaign that we know of. So pulling that, that was the reason we contacted that member again, community member again, to potentially be, the committee can be one person, but to be, at least part of a, to either lead or be part of a committee to fulfill that requirement and get that word into the voter guide.
Got it. Okay.
So, Carrie, for a special board meeting, then, I mean, that's something that we could do. Matt, you're back when I'm
This
back.
weekend.
You're back this weekend? Okay, I'm not back until the middle of next week, but can certainly participate this way. Again, Carrie, I had emailed another name to you who I believe would be willing to write, probably for either side. So,
I think I must have missed that email. Was it an email?
okay.
I'm not
Yeah,
surprised.
it
There's a
was.
lot of emails coming through.
I
Yeah,
will
and I
get
would
it to
think
you again.
I would think as a special meeting it would be a very short meeting.
Yes.
I probably have to run in a few minutes because I guess here at Sivia Metropolitan Park District, the door doesn't lock. It only locks from the outside. So the staff member was going to have to stay here and lock it after I was done. So I don't know if she's waiting or not.
Okay.
But I thought I might stay on until after you voted on the election resolution or to answer additional questions on it.
Jim, I have one more question. What is I know you referred to it, but I couldn't see it. What's the official resolution title?
Um,
Or what is the official measure title?
well, I believe it's, I call it the ballot resolution, maybe ballot resolution, election resolution. I don't know if Deanna had a specific title when she sent this document.
So
But yeah,
they would approve resolution number 2023-3,
correct.
election resolution or ballot resolution. And it doesn't have to have a further title like
Yeah, not that I know
aquatic
of.
center fund. Okay. That's
Yeah,
general, the more general, the better.
yeah. And then it would have to be filed with the Island County auditor, um, by August 1st. So I would say play it safe and have somebody probably drive it up there. And here at Siview, I was putting pressure on them, said, yeah, I think they'll have somebody go down to King County on this Friday and file it. But, just as long as you get it filed with the election department auditor of Island County a few days prior to August 1st.
And that could be a commissioner. It doesn't have to be a staff person, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The resolution has signature spots, so it would be best, I would think, if people were able to stop by and sign it.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I know everybody's kind of, Matt, when did you say you're back in town?
This weekend.
And I don't know when Eric's going to be back. He wasn't going to be available for those later meetings in July, so that suggests to me that he's not available to be here in person.
Yeah. I guess the question for Deanna is, could you, would electronic signatures, like DocuSign signatures that you copy and pasted, would that be sufficient, or does it have to be like what they call a wet copy where all the commissioners would have to come in? Or
If we're not able to get one of the commissioners to sign it, is that a problem?
That's a question for Deanna. Sorry, hate to defer on that.
Okay.
But
Because
I'm thinking in this day and age that the DocuSign signatures would be fine, or it's something where you have a couple copies of what's the bottom page, the page number, it says 7 with all the signatures. Maybe you have to take a couple copies and you fax it, email it to Eric wherever he is, and he signs it and scans it and sends it back to you. But I'm sure
Yeah.
something like that would work.
So Carrie, I can come in and sign on Wednesday the 26th, and Eric is in and out of cell service. He didn't give me a return date, but if he has cell service, I can get him to do an authentisign. I can set that up.
Okay, are there any other questions that people need to answer before I would then, if you're okay, Jen, make a motion on this resolution?
Yeah, if there's no
So-
further discussion.
will there be an opportunity for more discussion after the motion and seconding?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking. Okay, all right, then
Yep.
there are, yeah. And maybe I can say a few things that now before you bother. So I think I've expressed that staff is
Yeah.
maxed out. And even though I know you guys are all going to do lots of things to make this a success or, pitch in, it is absolutely going to add to our plate. I would like to see us be through cost estimating before putting this bond out there. I'd like to see us before, because I would like to have a clear picture of what this is going to look like, which, through value engineering and all of that. So as the press is notified about this, or the public, I mean. This feels very rushed. I realize that there's a lot of groundwork already done, but this part right now is exceedingly rushed, where, lots of emails going around, lots of edits, and we're throwing this part together very quickly. As a staff, we're kind of at a point where just one little tiny thing is just so much more than we can. hold off.
So on my end, Carrie, what we can do is build in a couple extra months, assuming voter approval, instead of like rushing things and trying to get it done late December, sometime in January. We can push it off like to say by March 1. So then that takes pressure off of you and gives more time. So that's what I can do to accommodate. And then on the financial management policy, I can kind of take the lead with Matt and get it in a pretty clean draft and then send it to you so you don't have to go through so many iterations. So that's, in a sense, two less things you have to do.
Thank you. I know everybody is going to pitch in. I know that. And I know everybody has been. It's just, I want to do this right. I want the public to be confident that we're making informed decisions, that we're giving them time to think about whether they want to spend, an extra, whatever it is, I don't know, $100 a year. I don't want to rush into something when we just saw what happened with a school bond, when they threw together items and I do again, I want to acknowledge that a lot of groundwork has been done in the design process and everything, but this part is definitely rushed. And this is when we're in the middle of a triathlon and a roofing project and we don't have a director, and it's just a lot. And even with all of your assistance, everything passes through the office. And I hate to, this is just so, I hate to schedule a meeting when we don't know if all of the commissioners can be there. And I guess this special meeting is a pretty simple piece of it. So it's not a big decision, but I wish Eric were here today.
Yeah,
Jim,
my
is
only,
it
go
the
ahead.
bond rating presentation that you are referencing pushing out to March?
It'd be you get delivery of funds on March 1st. And then in working backwards from that, 2 weeks prior, we price the bonds. And then about three weeks prior to that, we actually have the formal rating presentation. Just, adds some leeway, provides flexibility in case, it's an unfavorable market. And it used to be in the good old days, voters would approve a November ballot, and then everybody would scurry and hurry and close, by December 30th. And now the county treasurers have gotten more comfortable with, okay, here's the estimated payment for 2024. You'd be on the 2024 tax collection roll. But then we can just make sure when we price those bonds, say in February, that first payment doesn't exceed whatever was provided to the Island County treasurer and assessor. And so it takes pressure off of staff, but it also allows flexibility on market conditions so that you're not backed into a corner. All of a sudden, if it's a bad market one week and, you're trying to close before year end and you price your bonds there, then that's one where that doesn't make me feel good. So I'm always trying to get the lowest interest rate.
Matt, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, can I say two more things that is speaking against what I just said? So I want to acknowledge that if we did it in November, it would cost a lot less. because costs would be shared. So I acknowledge that, and I appreciate that from a voter perspective, that using that particular ballot gets a lot of items on it, and so it'll save the district or save taxpayers. I understand it can be wrapped into the bond, but that'll save taxpayers eventually, one way or another, if we did it in a November election, not necessarily this one. I also would appreciate about November being that it would reach more voters, so we would get a better, probably cross-section of our district or people in general.
And my only point was, I appreciate you sharing that feedback about the staff feeling rushed, but my perspective from the sentiment from the public over the number of surveys that we've done and the public interface that we've done is that my perspective is that the public does not feel like we're rushing. The public believes that we have, I think the feedback I've received, that we've taken a methodical approach to this. We had proposed going to the voters more than a year ago. And we said we need to take more time. We need to get further down the path. We need to understand the design. We need to understand the costs. We are much further down the path. And I do not think the public believes we're rushing into anything. So
one more thought here is from a budgeting perspective is if it doesn't pass in November, would we be running it again in April or something?
yeah, that's at the Joint Aquatic Center Committee. We've talked about that, just general terms, but the next available ballots would be February and April and August in 2024.
Okay, so again, from a cost perspective, if we had to run it again, it wouldn't save money, of course. But then again, if we stayed on the path to postponing to April, and we were to budget for it running twice, because of if you would be willing to run it twice, then we would have to budget for 2 elections. So that's, again, speaking against my own case. I guess I think we should put it on the ballot when we think when it would really represent voter interest.
Yeah,
Any other feedback from commissioners?
I like the idea of having it in a November with the stats showing that we get a better public turnout to represent us as a whole. Yeah, I do feel that the staff is overworked and we don't have a director. At the same time, there's so much work done on this. It's tough. You don't want to overload a already overloaded ship even more. But I know the ball is rolling towards getting this on the ballot, and November is a good time. I personally don't think that spring would be a great time with those lower numbers. So either this year or next year, November.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. If you decide to go with this November, and God forbid, the voters came back, but I don't know, we'll say 55, 58, 59%, so close, but not quite there, then usually the recommendation, and this is more from the election consultants that I know, is put it right back on the ballot, capitalize on the support, and focus on the precincts that voted yes. But as a rule of thumb, when I speak at conferences on subjects like this, we say avoid February because that's when school districts always go. And personally, I think you kind of lose some momentum because it gets interrupted by the Christmas holiday and the New Year's holiday. And so then we say, yeah, consider April. You could also consider August, but you definitely wouldn't want to go with November 2024 because that's the presidential election, and that's going to pull out a lot of no voters. So we're just hearing from other municipalities. There's a little bit of a rush where they're trying to get on the ballot, say for either this November or next April, next August, but they're definitely avoiding the presidential election.
Okay, if there is no other commissioner feedback, I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2023-3.
Let me get to my minutes here.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2023-3. All those in favor say aye.
Krista, aye.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the resolution passes.
Okay. I know Krista needs to, do you need to leave at night or be there at night?
I will make it work.
So I think the next couple of items we can move through pretty quickly, but I was hoping to make sure that we get the diamond dust infield mix quote approved. So I will try to move through things really quickly.
Thank you all. I think I'll sign off now if that's okay.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you, Jim,
you.
so much. Good
Thank you,
information.
All
Jim.
right. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, the property acquisition consideration. There was a price reduction on the property of $100,000.
On the property as a whole, Jennifer?
As a whole, yeah, because that's how it's being marketed as a whole. So it came down to $1,000,008 on July 1st. There is still no action. One of the financing terms that they are offering is seller financing. And so I reached out to Carrie Kirshner, the listing broker. She said that the executor of the estate said for seller financing, it would need to be a minimum of 20% down. When I pressed her on a time frame or any consideration for an interest rate, whether it needed to be principal and interest or just interest payments, she said that could all be negotiated. First would be to agree on price. I did let her know that I was not certain, because we are, a public entity, whether or not we could even do seller financing, but I at least wanted to get that information for you. I don't know that
Okay.
there's really anything further to discuss. I mean, if we're still just kind of noodling on it, there's no action on her end at this point.
Okay. Yes. So the next item on the agenda is the comprehensive plan update. Let me open up my memo on that. Okay, so because the meetings have been long, the item was tabled last meeting, and then we discussed adding a specific workshop to go over, to work just on this, to focus on that. And excuse me, my attempts to schedule the workshop were unsuccessful in getting a full group or even a mostly full group gathered. So I'm proposing a first workshop in September after a director is fully on board and after folks are back from vacations and after we've wrapped up summer busyness. So I was suggesting that we make an attempt to schedule a board workshop specifically for that. That was just my suggestion for how to get there. I'm open to other ideas.
Yeah, and just FYI, the materials that are listed there, I've drafted all those. So we have, they're the ones that I presented a couple of meetings ago. So we have the foundational documents, and in the time we would spend in this board meeting would be to look at those in detail and have us individual commissioners provide input to the rankings and the prioritization of different park resources that the standards say we need to have. So we got the baseline information ready to go. So as soon as we can meet, we can roll up our sleeves and go through this in detail.
Matt, do you think that we could tackle the rest of it all in one meeting, or would it need to be a couple of meetings? And how long?
No, I think
Would you guess?
the level of service determination is the foundational piece. And I think once we all agree on that's probably, a 90-minute exercise. And then after that, I think we can break up the tasks into individual commissioners or subcommittee. And then we can come back together later in the process, 3, 4, 5 months later to say, okay, let's bring the individual pieces back together and then reassemble the draft plan. So I think we need to have this meeting. Like I said, to me, it's 60 to 90 minutes. And that sets us on the path to then break out the individual parts. The staff will do some, and we can individually do different parts of it. So I think that's how it probably most efficiently go.
So
My
from a
personal
scheduling
schedule in
standpoint,
September is wide open. Yeah.
as is mine, Carrie. My September is wide open.
I think mine's pretty wide open too.
Yeah.
Preferably if it could be a Monday or Tuesday, better. Days off, but I can make the other days work too. Monday or Tuesday.
And
Monday, Tuesday, good for me.
are people willing to consider a Saturday or Sunday workshop? I'm just throwing that into the mix. I don't feel one way or another about it, but I'm throwing it into the mix.
Yeah, that's fine for me also.
Yeah, that could work.
By the time I get to September, I should be able to make something work.
Do we want it to be before the board meeting or after meeting? Like by a week or so?
Before, because the meeting in September is kind of on the late side. It's the 20th.
Uh-huh.
So
So the 11th or the 12th perhaps?
yes.
Or even the 9th or 10th or 16th or 17th.
Carrie, remind what's the date of the first voter information session?
September 7th.
7th, a Thursday.
Yes, we're going to need to also schedule, because those meetings are not voter, those are design meetings.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I assume there's going to be also some voting, some public meetings for the bond specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Eric and I will come up with a schedule for those. So I think schedule is a priority.
Late September and then like mid-October.
Yeah.
For those meetings.
Yeah, so maybe the week after the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, like the week of the 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere in there.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw a date out there. Okay, September 11th
Beautiful.
for workshop.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Is it possible to have it, well, that's right back to school for Eric, but, so maybe like 3:30 p.m. Of course.
Sounds good.
Anytime.
Okay, 3:30. All right.
That works for me.
Yep.
Okay. Putting it on.
Okay.
That was 3:30. She said 3:30.
Yeah.
3:30, yes.
So 3:30 to 5.
Okay, so let's see. Are we good on that?
Mm-hmm.
I've lost my agenda. There's so many things open here. Sorry that you all have to watch me sift through this. Okay, on the agenda, next we have executive director search, affirmation of hiring of executive director Brian Thomaser. So Brian's not in the meeting, and I didn't have anything in particular for this. I don't know if we want to formalize it in some way. He's working on a very part-time basis, mostly working on just getting up to speed as much as he can between now and when he wraps up his other job. So he had other commitments that he wanted to honor with his job at SeaTac. And so that's why he's not starting until after those programs and items are wrapped up. So his first official full-time day will be September 7th. And I'm sure he's ready to take South Whidbey by storm, and I think it would be good. Maybe, I don't know if we need to acknowledge it officially in some way here, but also, I think when he's able to be here to have some sort of official welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is getting him up to speed remotely adding a huge burden?
It's a thing. I mean, I don't know if remotely is so much more difficult, but it's a task, right? And he's going to be reaching out, or I think he's already started reaching out to you guys. And I'm trying to give him information about, here's this committee, this is who to talk to about this. And I imagine that we'll get together as those committees, those projects all together to kind of pass the torch. So it's a thing. But it's a necessary item to be able to hand this off. Fortunately, I think he's quick on the uptake. I think, but I know that some of it's the budget part it's a lot to digest right away, especially if you look at that document and the formulas.
Yeah.
So.
Start September 1st.
7.
7.
Okay, right.
Mhm. Yeah. He's in the process of selling his home and busy. Okay, I don't know if we need any sort of, I don't think we need an action item. I think you guys covered it in your motion to offer. So, unless there's anything else to say about that, Jennifer, are you ready to move on to the last item?
Just as, if it's worth anything, just as a point of clarification on why the September 7th start date, when the previous negotiations stagnated, he went ahead and agreed to participate in some camps that he would have otherwise passed on if we had not stagnated. So that's the reason for the delay. So if anything, he's honoring commitments, which is a good character. So no, that's it. So moving on to new business then, Diamond Dust Infield Mix.
Okay, let me get there again.
There it is, towards the.
Okay, there's the quote. Okay, so Tom secured a quote on Diamond Dust Infield Mix in the amount of $7,206.91, including taxes. Tom reports that this is a sole source provider for this specific product that we use in all of our baseball infields. No other providers offer this mix, so additional quotes are not available. There is sufficient funds available in the budget line item for this purchase. Staff recommends approval.
Right, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to go ahead with the purchasing of Diamond Dust in the total amount of $7,206.91 from Specialty Mining and Infield Materials.
I'll second that motion.
All right, Carrie, I didn't quite catch the whole thing from Jake, but I think I've got it. It has been moved and seconded to approve the Diamond Dust Infield Mix in the amount of $7,206.91. All those in favor say aye.
Big guy.
Krista, aye.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is passed.
One last thing before we go, and before we adjourn. So something that slipped away in all of this process of hiring a new director and such is recognition that tomorrow is Tom's 25th anniversary at the district. And so I think it would be really great if we recognize that at the next meeting, perhaps.
Absolutely. Especially when he's actually here.
Yeah. So he knows that we were planning to do something.
Yes. Also, I think at the last meeting, I think Jennifer, you suggested perhaps something fishing related
Correct.
as a token of that.
I think he would appreciate a plaque or something like that.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
he's traditional like that.
Yes.
Instead of like a fishing watch.
Or he might like that too, but I think also some sort of plaque would be.
And do we typically do anything 5, 10, 20 years, or have we in the past?
Not really.
Not
No.
really. Okay.
Not that I'm aware
Yeah,
of.
25. We should definitely do something.
Yeah.
That's a lot of years.
Yes, that Diamond Dust infield mix actually includes his own personal sweat and tears.
Do you need somebody to do some research on plaques, or do you have like a go-to for that sort of thing?
Yeah, we can. Do need to. I had an idea for one that was nice looking, but I haven't gotten to that.
If we could get like a little portion of the fishing pole on that plaque too. Maybe
Oh,
that
yeah.
could do
Or
both ideas.
maybe a baseball diamond.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That
yeah.
would be easier and pretty darn neat.
Yeah.
The plaque is a baseball diamond.
Yeah.
The whole plaque.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, some sort of gift if we could think of something, but
He gets a lot of baseball gifts from his baseball team.
I'm sure.
I'd be happy to chip in a little bit too if we need to make that happen.
I'd be happy to take up a collection and get him a gift card to Cabela's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does Tom leave the island? I don't know. I know there's plenty of people who don't like to leave the island.
Sometimes he will for fishing and baseball games.
Okay.
Not this time of year.
Okay, so I think that's it.
All right, well, if you want to contribute to a gift card to Cabela's, just go ahead and text me and I'll make it happen.
You too.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, Jennifer.
Okay, I think that's it. If you want to adjourn us.
I'd like to do one more recognition. Matt, good morning, sir. I wish I could buy you a cup of espresso or a cappuccino or whatever it is to get you going, but coming to a board meeting at 3 a.m. is clearly above and beyond. And I feel like I say this all the time and it might be losing some of its charm, but I hope not. You are such a tremendous asset and I appreciate you above and beyond, and thank you so much for taking time out of this once in a lifetime vacation to spend time with us instead of sleeping. So you are a gem and it doesn't go without notice.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You as well. You're on the road. Everybody else has busy lives, so, and the staff as well. So thanks.
All right, and with that, we are adjourned at 9:05.
Have a good vacation, Matt, and you too, Jennifer.